Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to look at the weekly metagame breakdown for the standard best of one format here on MTG Arena. We're going to look at the best performing decks of the week. We're going to be focusing Diamond and Mythic rank. It's about a third of the way through the season, and folks are progressing their way into Mythic. We want to see what's working. In particular, this Saturday is the Qualifier play-in for standard best of one. The following weekend is the actual qualifier, which will be standard best 3. But those folks who have play-in points, who just want to try to qualify, can take to the best of 1 event to try to qualify. So we're going to cover a number of decks that could work for you in that capacity. So covering a bunch of decks that we get the data from Untapped GG, what you see on the screen. If you want to use Untapped, link is in the video description. I'll paste and timestamp all these deck lists as well. Just jumping into it, in terms of popularity, what you're going to be seeing on the ladder from Diamond Mythic rank. Mono Red, most played and represented deck at 12.3. Very close behind it is the Azorius Omniscience combo. This deck doesn't really have a clear kind of hate deck. It's a very fast combo, can win on turn 4, has some interaction. So this is something that you may want to consider for the event. It's probably the deck I would play if I'm going to play. I'm deciding between playing in the standard best of 1, standard best of 3 play-in, or just doing there's a bonus draft or sealed one. I might try the sealed one just for fun. Then you have Mono Black at 9%, Azorius Control at 5.9, Esper Bounce at about 5.7. The Auras decks, there's Mardu and there's Boros. Realistically, these should probably be combined and more represented here. The main difference is you have the Fling package that's included as part of this. And then this Rakdos Aggro is kind of a more aggressive, like a mono red version with the Fling cards kind of in that respect. In terms of looking at like metagame distribution, mono red has been towards the top for the last little bit. We saw mono black kind of surpass. Big drop off in Esper Bounce from about 16% down to about 5%. And then we're seeing the mono black midrange kind of inch in between the 3 top decks there. Looking at the data, we have 82,000 games played in the last week. And then jumping right into it, Azorius Omni combo is the highest win rate deck, 75%. So if you want to see this deck, I did play it in best of 3 for the metagame challenge. I have a video up on my YouTube if you want to see the deck in action. In terms of best of 1 versus best of 3, it doesn't make too much of a difference because you're pretty much executing the same game plan. There's just some edge cases in terms of how you sideboard, but this deck does use portions of its sideboard for the combo itself. And kind of going from there. So how you're setting up self-mill. So Picklock Prankster, you have Moment of Truth, Philagi. Some of them are playing Oracle of, I forget the name. It's the 1/3 that you could draw discard style effect over the Picklock Prankster. Basically play cards that can put cards into your graveyard. Stock Up is a card that is being incorporated in some of these decks to help you curate. Once it's in, you want to put into your graveyard a copy of Omniscience. With Omniscience in your graveyard, you cast Abuela's Awakening, targeting the Omniscience, and then with Invasion of Arcavios, you go into your sideboard. What you're able to do with this one, and there's a few ways to do it, but with the Invasion, you get Season of Weaving, you create a copy of Omniscience, and then return all non-land permanents to their owner's hand. From there, you're able to cast the second Invasion, and then you get Beseech the Mirror, get another copy of Invasion from your deck. When you have 2 of these in play, then you get this Town Ain't Big Enough, bounce them both back, get Haunt the Network, and then just basically keep looping where this town bounces these 2 back to your hand, and then keep repeatedly casting Haunt the Network as a way to repeatedly drain your opponent out that way there. So you don't need a combat step. You can basically take them out from any life total. But there's also, if your opponent's tapped out and they're not going to interact, you could just go straight for Invasion into Beseech and then go with that line there, skipping the Season of Weaving steps. It's a lot of clicks. You probably don't want to do this on mobile. From one Azorius deck to the other, we have Azorius Control at 67%. So this one here, it's got some good additions for best of 1 in mind. Having access to Authority of the Console's main helps against some of the aggressive decks. Just kind of tapping down any of their haste creatures gains you some life. Cheap interaction with Elspeth's Smite, Get Lost, No More Lies. You have a mill package as your win condition between River Churn Monument as well as Jace. You can mill out huge chunks and then double it up with the exhaust ability. Soul Partition also can reset them, which is kind of cool. Kazul's Flanker is a flash speed interaction with Graveyard Hate. Can gain you some life. Just a flexible card all around. A couple copies of Stock Up, Lockdown, some varied sweepers, Hornlock Whale for cheap interaction, and then Farsight Ritual. So not the Pro Tour list necessarily. That one was playing like Beza main, stuff like that. You have Fountain Port here, Restless Anchorage, full set of Demolition Fields, and the mana base as well. So the Mardu Aggro, Mardu Fling, Mardu Auras, whatever you want to call it, it's basically, this is the black card, but you're never casting the actual Callous Sellsword side. You're casting the burn together to fling a big creature. This deck here, you have the mouse package, makes a large creature with things like Optimistic Scavenger out that you can put counters on different things. Ethereal Armor scales it. You have Sheltered by Ghost as kind of pseudo protection and removal. Shard Mage is actual protection. Feather Flight cycles and gives you evasion. Demonic Ruckus can be a cheap card that kind of plots on turn 1, replaces itself again, your Monstrous Rage package. Sunbellow Verge, a big addition to this deck in terms of improving its mana base, having untapped duels in the deck. Red deck to another, Mono Red Aggro. So this deck here, a little bit more burn focused in the best of 1 meta. The big thing with a lot of these decks are playing Soulstone Sanctuary. That might be something you want to consider as 1 to 2 of in the mana base. This version here is also on a full set of Witchstalker Frenzy over Lightning Strike, and similarly instead of the Shocks, or they're playing Shocks and Burst Lightnings. You'll sometimes see Lightning Strike as kind of the additional card there, filling out that slot. Some of the mono red decks in best of 3 are going upwards of 22 lands because they are having access to Sunspine Links as a way to deal with more domain that you see in best of 3. But your mouse package, your general aggressive kind of slant in terms of the deck itself. Goes quick. This gives you a little bit more interaction in terms of the creature mirrors, just having 8 1-mana removal spells, with Witchstalker also being potentially 1 mana. Don't forget, you also have the lines where you can attack in with Screaming Nemesis. You can redirect this as 5 damage through the Nemesis to your opponent. Mono White Lifegain. So starter friendly deck. Lifegain is cheats, but lots of ways to kind of gain life in this deck. Healer Hawk, Sanctifier, you have Leonin Vanguard, Rune Lurker Bat, so a bunch of cheap things. You have your Pridemate package, Johnny's Pridemate, as well as Essence Chandler. One thing I mentioned in past videos, you may want to play some of the Pain lands in this deck. While you're only producing white mana, this gets flying if you lost life for the turn. So having the Pain lands, anything that produces white in another color, allows you to on demand take damage to give this flying, which could be big as an evasive effect. Sheltered by Ghost, Linden as a way to gain life whenever creatures attack. You have Exemplar of Light, draws you cards. Leyline of Hope doubles or gives you extra life and is that Righteous Valkyrie style ability. And Sarah Paragon gives you some card advantage in a virtual way by allowing you to cast stuff from your graveyard. Mono Black Midrange. So this deck here has got the Demon package, usually referred to as Unholy Annex, card engine, gets you your big demons. You have the Bloodletter, Unstoppable Slasher combo to one-hit your opponent. Archfiend is a bigger creature on the top end. You're seeing a lot of bounce. This is a little bit of a liability with stun counters, stuff of that nature. Lilies, just a single copy. Edicts, just a whole bunch of removal. Disruption, Hand Hate mixed in. Soulstone Sanctuary, wisely placed in the mana base as a way to act as another demon. That works with the gain and drain off this card here. Moving on, we got Dimir Control. So 57%. This is a pseudo mill win condition. With the deck, you have ways to discard effects. Bitter Triumph, you have Refute, Draw, Discard, Liliana. You want to put into your graveyard Teresian Mindbreaker. So you can unearth it for 4 mana. Comes into play, opponent mills half their library. And then you're able to kind of like mill them out the remaining amount with Jace, or just River Churn, Exhaust also mills them out that requisite amount. Cut downs, Duresses is cheap Hand Hate, Bitter Triumph. You have Deadly Cover Up in here as a way to kind of sweep up your opponent's board. Shieldred also mixed into the mix. Removal, your opponent's putting cards in their graveyard, you can flip it for some value, but kind of a grindy, interactive deck. You probably don't need Shieldred, I would say. You're better off just playing more cheap interaction, either more Hand Hate or just generic removal, go for the throat, stuff like that, just surviving early. This, you're already going to win with mill more often than not. It's kind of win more in the 5-drop slot. Esper Bounce, so 56%. This deck is moving a lot of the lists online to a couple copies of Stock Up in the main. So moving off Optimistic Scavenger to a little bit more grindy. You have Overlord of the Baelmerk, Stock Up, and Preacher in the main. Bunch of cheap kind of enter the battlefield style removal options that can be bounced up. This is a 1-for-1 kind of port of the best of 3 version. Destroy Evil could be okay against, say, Omni. You could try to hit the Omni when it becomes a token creature. You get some value there, but Hand Hate, kind of keep bouncing your stuff with Nurturing Pixie, Fear of Isolation, get that value engine going. And then Kaido, Cheatin, you have this town, Storm Chasers combo, which is very powerful in that regard. Mana base can be a bit painful at times. You have a lot of pain lands, as well as having, on turn 1, you could need both black, white, and blue. So that could be a little bit of an issue sometimes for consistency against some of the red decks, but access to a lot of removal, just ways to keep rebuying that removal over and over, helps you grind out those matchups. Jeskai Oculus at 50, just a shade under 56%. So one card that's kind of a flex here is Spyglass Siren. I've seen some decks play Mako instead over the Siren. I've also seen some decks reconfigure some of their cards to play the This Town package with Storm Chaser's Talent. But this deck here is the one from the Pro Tour from the Japanese team. Cheap kind of interaction, bounce off into the Flood Maw, Spell Pierce, and Torch Tower, but you're drawing discarding with the deck to reanimate Oculus ideally through Helping Hand and Recommission. Prophecy Memory as a way to put counters on a bunch of your creatures. You're doing a lot of draw discard style effects, so you could kind of buff up a really big creature. Steam Score Scholar, having Vigilance, really good into creature mirrors. We then have Boros Burn at 55%. So elements of the mono red deck, just heavier on the burn package. So not the mouse package. Hired Claw, Swift Spear, Slick Shot, Screaming Nemesis, and then just burn, baby. Boros Charm, Helix, Lightning Strike, Bolt Wave, Burst Lightning, Shock. This probably does have a bit of an advantage in the mirror. Like the red mirrors, because you do end up having more just removal that can go face. You also have some incidental life gain, so that does kind of help in that respect. The one thing I'm going to adjust is you shouldn't be playing this in the mana base, just play the new Verge. It's a much better card there. I would also suggest just playing 20 lands and then adding 2 more Slick Shots. So I'm going to make that minor revision. I think that would make the deck a lot better, relatively speaking. And then the last deck I want to share, this one is from Community, Pain Train. They went 36-10. Up to 851 Mythic, and it is a Naya Ramp Overlord deck. This Beanstalk card might actually be good and playable, but jokes aside, you have Kazula's Flanker in here for your Graveyard Hate, Haunt Woods, cheap removal and Rides In, you have Lockdown, you have Roxanne, you have your Overlord package here with Overlord of the Boiler Bridges instead of Baelmerk, which is interesting. Sunfall, Season of Burrow can make tokens, return stuff from your graveyard, as well as just be exile removal, some Vivians, Leyline Bindings. So kind of a Naya package. The choice of Overlords is interesting here. I would probably sooner play like Overlord of Mistmoors over like the Eternal Wanderer Vivian, but no Zur in this one, but a little bit more interactive early on in terms of the game. You got access to Helix and stuff like that in the mana base. Looking at their stats, 4 and 3 against red, but beating up mono black, beating up some of these Azorius decks, reasonable against like the bounce style strategies, and then against like a lot of the fringe decks, just beating up on those ones there. That's it for the week. Good luck to those competing. If you get through the qualification, drop a comment and let us know what you get it with. Catch you next time. Thanks for watching.